Why do your legs feel heavier some mornings than others, even when you did nothing different the day before? Why do your knees creak louder in certain weeks, your ankles puff up after certain meals, and your energy vanish halfway through an ordinary afternoon? Most people search for answers in exercise routines, in sleep schedules, in stress levels. Almost no one looks at the bowl of fruit sitting on the kitchen counter. And that is exactly where this story begins. Fruit has spent decades wearing a halo. We were taught from childhood that fruit is the safe choice, the guilt-free choice, the automatic yes on every health list ever printed. So when a person past 60 starts noticing their legs feel unstable, their knees ache walking upstairs, or their feet swell by dinner time, fruit is usually the last suspect they consider. This video is going to challenge that assumption, gently and scientifically, without turning fruit into an enemy. Because the truth is more nuanced, more interesting, and far more useful than simple fear. Here is the biological shift almost nobody explains clearly. As the body ages past 50 and 60, the way it manages sugar begins to change. Insulin sensitivity, the body's ability to usher glucose out of the bloodstream and into muscle cells efficiently, tends to decline. Muscle mass itself, which acts like a sponge for blood sugar, naturally shrinks with age unless deliberately maintained through activity. At the same time, small blood vessels, the microscopic highways feeding your calves, your feet, your knee joints, become more vulnerable to inflammation and slower repair. None of this overnight. It happens quietly, year after year, until one day a food that felt harmless at 40 starts producing symptoms at 65. This is the part that surprises most viewers. Two people can sit at the same table, eat the exact same fruit in the exact same portion, and walk away with completely different experiences. One person, nothing. The other feels heaviness creeping into their calves an hour later, or notices their ankles look slightly swollen by evening. This is not imagination, and it is not weakness. It is biological individuality, shaped by circulation health, kidney function, joint condition, medication use, and how active the muscles have remained over the years. Understanding this difference is the real key to eating fruit wisely in the second half of life. Before going further, an important boundary. Nothing in this video replaces medical advice. If you live with diabetes, kidney disease, gout, heart disease, or you take regular medication, any significant dietary change deserves a conversation with your doctor or pharmacist first. And if you ever experience sudden leg swelling, chest pain, shortness of breath, or sudden weakness on one side of your body, that is not a fruit question. That is an emergency, and it deserves immediate medical attention. With that said, let's walk through 7 familiar fruits that deserve a second look, not because they are dangerous, because portion, timing, and context change everything. Pineapple is often treated like a tropical vitamin pill. It is bright, fragrant, and associated with digestive enzymes people vaguely remember hearing about. But strip away the marketing, and pineapple is still a concentrated source of natural sugar. A body with strong insulin response and active muscles can process that sugar quickly. A body that has become less active, or whose insulin signaling has weakened with age, may see blood glucose rise faster and stay elevated longer. Repeated glucose spikes over months and years are linked to stress on the small vessels that keep the lower legs supplied with oxygen and nutrients. Picture those vessels as narrow delivery roads leading to a small town at the edge of the body, your feet and calves. When the road stays congested too often, deliveries slow down, and the town starts to feel it: tiredness in the legs, colder feet, slower healing. There is also a lesser-known detail worth knowing. Pineapple and its enzyme bromelain are frequently discussed alongside blood-thinning medications, because some research suggests interactions worth monitoring. If you take blood thinners or several prescriptions, this is worth mentioning to your pharmacist, especially with concentrated pineapple juice or supplements. None of this banning pineapple. It means treating it as a flavorful addition eaten in modest portions, ideally with protein alongside it, rather than a daily solo snack on an empty stomach. Bananas carry perhaps the strongest reputation of any fruit for muscle health, largely because of potassium. Leg cramps and the instinct to reach for a banana feel almost automatic for many older adults. But muscle strength is a much bigger puzzle than one mineral. It depends on stable blood sugar, adequate protein intake, hydration, magnesium, vitamin D, nerve function, and consistent movement. A very ripe banana eaten alone delivers a quick wave of natural sugar, and for someone with insulin resistance, that wave can be followed by an energy crash that feels remarkably like weakness in the legs. There is also a detail rarely discussed on camera. Kidney function tends to decline gradually with age, often without symptoms, and healthy kidneys are what allow the body to safely clear excess potassium. For someone with reduced kidney function, high potassium intake is a genuinely different equation than for someone with healthy kidneys. This is precisely why nutrition advice cannot be one size fits all. If cramping continues no matter how many bananas you eat, the real culprit might be dehydration, magnesium deficiency, medication side effects, or reduced circulation, not a lack of potassium at all. A smarter approach is portion awareness, half a banana instead of a large whole one, paired with a source of protein like plain yogurt or a few nuts, rather than turned into a sugary smoothie that hides its true sugar load behind a healthy-looking blender. Grapes are the fruit that disappears without anyone noticing. Nobody consciously decides to eat a mountain of sugar, yet a bowl of grapes in front of the television can vanish within minutes because each grape feels too small to count. For someone managing blood sugar, joint inflammation, or a history of gout, this matters more than it seems. Grapes contain natural fructose, and while whole fruit is metabolically different from candy thanks to its fiber and water content, portion size still governs the outcome. There is also a specific connection worth understanding. High fructose intake has been associated in research with elevated uric acid levels, and uric acid buildup is the underlying mechanism behind gout flares, those sudden, burning episodes of pain in the big toe or knee that can appear overnight. Grapes are not soda, and they are not the villain for most people, but for those already prone to gout or blood sugar swings, an unmeasured bowl eaten as a standalone snack deserves a second thought. The fix is refreshingly simple. Portion the grapes into a small bowl before eating, rather than snacking straight from the bag, and pair them with a meal rather than eating them as an isolated treat during an idle afternoon. Watermelon feels like innocence itself, mostly water, cool, refreshing, seemingly weightless. That perception is exactly what makes overeating it so easy. Because watermelon does not feel heavy or indulgent, people often eat far larger portions of it than they would of any other dessert, and those portions carry more natural sugar than the light feeling suggests. For someone managing blood glucose, this can produce the same up-and-down energy pattern seen with other high-sugar fruits, a burst of energy followed by a dip that can translate into heavier legs, less confidence rising from a chair, or a stronger pull toward sitting down rather than walking. Watermelon also offers very little protein or fat, so it does not keep hunger satisfied for long, which can lead to grazing throughout the day, a pattern that keeps blood sugar swinging rather than staying steady. None of this, watermelon forbidden. A measured portion enjoyed alongside a balanced meal, rather than a giant bowl eaten in place of dinner, keeps its refreshing pleasure without the hidden sugar surprise. Oranges deserve a more careful distinction than most people realize, because the whole fruit and its juice behave very differently inside the body. A whole orange comes with fiber and requires chewing, both of which slow down sugar absorption naturally. Orange juice strips away that fiber and that chewing pace entirely, meaning a single glass can deliver the sugar equivalent of several oranges within a few rushed minutes. For decades, orange juice was marketed as breakfast's healthiest companion, yet for someone watching blood sugar, triglycerides, or inflammation, a daily glass can quietly work against those goals. There is also a broader lesson about citrus and medication that extends well beyond oranges, grapefruit being the most famous example of a fruit capable of interfering with how certain drugs are processed by the body. This is a reminder that natural does not automatically mean risk-free when it comes to interacting with prescriptions, and a conversation with a pharmacist costs nothing but a few minutes. If mornings feel incomplete without citrus, choosing the whole orange over the juice and pairing it with a source of protein like eggs keeps the vitamin C benefit while smoothing out the sugar curve considerably. Green apples have built a reputation as the disciplined choice, crisp, tart, and seemingly lower in sugar than their red counterparts. That reputation is only partially deserved. The tartness of a green apple can aggravate acid reflux or sensitive digestion in some older adults, particularly when eaten late at night, and poor digestion often quietly disrupts sleep quality. Sleep, in turn, has a well-documented relationship with pain sensitivity, recovery, and even next-day mobility, so a restless night driven by an evening can show up the following day as stiffer knees and heavier legs, with the apple itself never suspected. There is also a subtler pattern worth noticing. An apple eaten alone as a snack, without protein or fat alongside it, may not keep hunger satisfied for long, leading to a second snack an hour later, and a slow drift toward a day built on easy carbohydrates rather than the protein needed to maintain muscle. Over months, that pattern can contribute to the quiet erosion of leg strength that so many people mistake for an inevitable part of getting older. Slicing the apple and pairing it with a small handful of nuts, a slice of cheese or unsweetened yogurt, and enjoying it after a meal rather than alone at night, keeps its fiber and freshness without the digestive friction. And then there is mango, the fruit most people never suspect at all, precisely because it feels like a treat rather than an everyday staple, something reserved for celebration rather than a daily ritual. That perception is a big part of why mango can slip past scrutiny so easily. It is genuinely one of the sweetest fruits available, richer in natural sugar per serving than most apples or oranges, and its soft, almost custard-like texture makes it very easy to eat quickly and in large amounts without the natural pacing that comes from chewing something firmer. A few slices after dinner rarely cause concern, but a full mango eaten alone in the afternoon, especially on a day with little movement, can behave inside the body more like a dessert than a snack. For someone already managing blood sugar swings, this matters, because mango's natural sugar content, combined with its softness and speed of eating, can produce one of the sharper glucose responses among common fruits. There is a psychological layer here too, worth naming honestly. Because mango is associated with indulgence rather than routine, people often give themselves permission to eat larger portions of it than they would of a fruit perceived as ordinary, reasoning that something so enjoyable must be earned or deserved. That mental shortcut, treat equals harmless, is exactly the kind of blind spot this entire discussion has been trying to illuminate. None of this erases mango's real nutritional value, its vitamin A, its fiber, its antioxidants. It simply means treating a generous serving of mango the same way you would treat any dessert, something to enjoy in a modest portion, ideally alongside protein, rather than a fruit bowl free pass, simply because it grew on a tree instead of being baked in an oven. Stepping back from these 7 fruits individually, a bigger and more useful question emerges, one that most nutrition content never quite reaches. Why does the body's relationship with sugar change so specifically in the legs, of all places, rather than showing up as some vague, generalized fatigue everywhere at once? The answer lies in basic circulatory geography. The legs are the farthest point from the heart, meaning blood has to travel the longest distance and work against gravity to return upward. Any inefficiency in blood vessel health, whether from repeated glucose spikes, low-grade inflammation, or reduced physical activity, tends to reveal itself first and most obviously at the far end of that circulatory highway, in the calves, ankles, and feet. This is also why so many seniors report an oddly specific symptom pattern: fine in the morning, heavier by evening, worse after a sugary snack, better after a short walk. That pattern is not coincidence, and it is not simply aging in the abstract. It is circulation responding, in close to real time, to what has been asked of it that day. There is also a behavioral pattern worth naming directly, because it explains why fruit so often escapes blame even when it plays a genuine role. Fruit is rarely eaten as a deliberate, conscious decision the way a slice of cake is. It is grazed on, snacked on, eaten while distracted, while watching television, while on the phone, while standing at the kitchen counter. This kind of unconscious eating bypasses the mental checkpoint that normally makes people pause and consider portion size. Nobody serves themselves a measured half cup of grapes with the same deliberateness they would use plating a piece of cake. They simply keep reaching into the bowl. Recognizing this pattern is not about assigning blame. It is about awareness, the simple, practical habit of portioning fruit onto a plate or into a bowl before eating, rather than eating directly from a larger container, which research on mindful eating consistently shows reduces total intake without requiring any willpower at all. It is also worth addressing a misconception that quietly shapes how many people think about aging itself: the assumption that weaker legs, stiffer knees, and lower energy are simply the unavoidable toll of getting older, a fixed and unchangeable countdown. That belief, while understandable, is only partly true. Some decline in muscle mass and vessel flexibility is a normal part of aging, but the pace and severity of that decline is influenced heavily by daily patterns that remain within a person's control. How much protein is eaten, how consistently muscles are used through movement, how stable blood sugar stays across the day, and how well sleep and hydration support recovery each night. Fruit choices are only one small piece of that larger picture, but they are a piece that is entirely adjustable, requiring no new equipment, no expensive supplement, and no drastic lifestyle overhaul, simply a shift in portion, pairing, and timing. What connects every one of these 7 fruits is not a warning to avoid them. It is a pattern, hiding in plain sight, about how portion, timing, and pairing quietly shape the way the aging body responds to natural sugar. A fruit eaten in a small, measured portion, alongside protein, after a balanced meal, behaves completely differently inside the body than the same fruit eaten in a large bowl alone on an empty stomach. This single shift, portion awareness paired with smarter timing, is one of the most underrated tools in maintaining stable energy, steadier joints, and stronger legs as the decades add up. The goal was never to create fear around fruit. Fruit still carries fiber, water, vitamins, and plant compounds that matter. The goal is to replace blind habit with informed awareness, so that the next time your legs feel unusually heavy, or your knees complain a little louder than expected, you have one more clue to examine rather than an unanswered mystery. Sometimes the body has been quietly trying to tell you something for months, long before it finally raises its voice, and learning to listen a little earlier might be the simplest form of self-care available to any of us, at any age.